Well, here we are again with another exciting, damn exciting, some might say, episode of this Pollinate podcast. Glad to have you all here, and really super excited and happy to have Jeff Quint here from Cedar Ridge Distillery, as the badge says. Jeff has been a comrade in arms and fellow traveler of county meetings and yes, well, anyways, we are kindred spirits in a lot of ways. He has put us to shame in terms of the amount of reach and scope of their production. I'll let him tell you all about what he does, but I'll just recognize right up front that he's definitely one of the premier entrepreneurs of the area, and we are indeed privileged to have you here. So, Jeff, tell us a little bit about, what you do over there at Cedar Ridge.
Well, first of all, glad to be here.
Yeah.
Thanks for having me. Yeah, Cedar Ridge. We're we're a vineyards, we're a winery, we're a distillery, and as we're much more. We're also a kitchen, we're a bar, a tasting bar, an event center, and I think all part of kind of a grand scheme to get traffic and visitors and fans built up. But Cedar Ridge, we're located between Cedar Rapids and Iowa City, just off I-380 at the Swisher exit. And we've been there for a little over 10 years. But to the locals, to people in pretty much mostly eastern Iowa, they think of us as a winery. And, we want them to think of us as that because locally we really want to get traffic into Cedar Ridge, get a lot of people bringing in their friends from out of town, and you slowly spread the word with your brand. It's a good way to build your brand while you're also maybe making some money in the process, which is how we get these things going, right? But outside of eastern Iowa, we're to the extent we are known, we're really only known for our whiskey. The only thing we're really trying to sell outside of eastern Iowa is the whiskey that we make. We're an Iowa-based company. Iowa makes more corn than any state in the country, and we believe we should be a net exporter of bourbon and good whiskey. So, that's a project we took on 15 years ago, and actually happy to say, maybe for the first time, that we just achieved we're the number one selling bourbon in the state of Iowa as of the end of last month. So, we've been shooting for that for years. So, finally got there.
But you've had a lot of other accolades. I mean, I think if I don't remember incorrectly, you were a Distiller of the Year, Distillery of the Year here year or two back, and
American Distilling Institute. Yep.
Yeah. I mean, that's not small chops there, and I mean,
we were as surprised as you, Paul, when because we didn't really apply for it. They called one year and they said, "Hey, you're coming to the show, aren't you?" I think it was in New Orleans that year, and I said, "Yeah, we're coming," And Bill Owen says, "Well, make sure you come to the awards ceremony." And I'm like, "Bill, I really don't like those awards ceremonies." And he goes, "No, you want to be at this one." So that's when we kind of knew that we were going to get the Distillery of the Year. So,
well, congratulations, and well deserved. I mean, the stuff it drinks well. It's because there are local products that are respectable, and there are local products that are exceptional, and I think you're certainly qualifies in the latter category. So you've got a winery. Tell us a little bit about your track to get there. How did this all unfold for you?
So it was 2002, and my wife and I were avid wine enthusiasts. I was a home winemaker. We were watching what was developing, and Paul, you'll know this. These French-American hybrids have only been developed in the last several decades, and they've basically enabled winemaking in the upper Midwest that really was pretty questionable before that. We have a higher quality grape to begin with, a better winemaking grape than we used to with these new French-American hybrids. We realized it wasn't a fad, it wasn't just a cyclical trend. This was a permanent change. It was going to change the landscape, and we wanted in. We said, well, let's set ourselves up to be, no matter what else happens, no matter how many competitors come along, let's set ourselves up to be the anchor winery between Cedar Rapids and Iowa City to serve those two markets. So we found the property we did, smack dab between the two cities on a hard surface road, and so we started developing the grounds, and 3 years of vine growing before we have any crop. And so we were in the middle of that. We were thinking, well, how are we going to differentiate ourselves when we do finally open? And that's when it occurred to us, what's more natural than grape growing would be, let's get a distillery going. And at the time, there weren't any in Iowa. And so, it took us 18 months to get licensed because even the state really hadn't processed anything like that for at our level or our scope, to make it and serve it right there, like was already starting to happen in some other states. So, one thing just turned into another, and before long we were all those things. We opened in 2005 with some white wines, some vodka, and some grappa. Those were our products.
And so because at that time, if I remember correctly, there was it was quite a convoluted process, right? If you wanted to retail your own distilled products, it couldn't happen. Or
horrible. Couldn't. The environment couldn't have been worse. And the good thing is I didn't know what I didn't know, otherwise I wouldn't have done it. But you get into this thing and you realize, okay, I got product now. I can't even sell it to the consumer because Iowa's laws hadn't been updated like some states had been. So we spend years lobbying down at the Capitol about once a week, all session long. I'd be down there. After 2 or 3 years, we finally got to the point where we could sell a bottle of our own product. Because the first few years we were open, we rented space next to a liquor store. People would come in, Ben's Beverage Depot in Cedar Rapids. People would come in, sample our stuff, and then I'd walk them over to the liquor store and they'd buy it there. Well, then when we moved out to our property where we're at, the law had just changed so that we could do that. Well, then later, we also got the law changed so that we could serve a cocktail on the property. So now we have a nice viable business there, but it took many years of lobbying to get things the way I think they needed to be for our industry to thrive.
And you and I have also kind of touched bases quite a bit about the local government and trying to get them. It's not just impediments on the state level, but also obviously county. For us, it's mostly we're outside city limits as our.
We're outside.
You're outside. Yep. And the county, at least on paper, has good intentions and they want to support local businesses, but as often happens, it seems there are competing interests in the county to disallow some things that we would like to happen. But that's been an ongoing challenge, and maybe we'll sometime over a bourbon have a chance.
Sometime maybe when the camera's not rolling.
When the camera's not rolling, we could talk more about the intricacies of working with that. Suffice it to say that in a good year, there's one step forward and one step back with the county folks. But we're learning to live with that as well. You have, I'm sure. So you also brought food in the picture, right? I mean, you're doing events and
we realized early on. People will come out once or twice to taste your products and see what's new. But if you want to get them out there regularly, you got to, my gosh, we got to kitchen, make it bigger, make it bigger, make it bigger. Music, make it better, make it better. And you're doing it too. The food, anytime we're open, the kitchen's open. So anytime you come to Cedar Ridge, you can eat. And of course, the wood-fired pizza is probably our most popular stuff. But that was part of the learning process for us. Is you gotta keep them there, get them there, and keep them there. And what we found is now the locals, when do they come out? They come out when they have friends or family in town. Hey, what are we going to do today? Well, among other things, let's stop by Cedar Ridge. Let's stop by Wilson's Orchard for sure. So we have similar models in that respect, and it's good to see. Good to see it when it works, right? Yeah,
and I mean with the COVID thing, the advantage that our two businesses have is that we do offer outdoor-based in a natural setting, outdoor-based activities that you can feel good about, whether it's taking your kids out or extended family or friends that come in town or whatever. A lot of that isn't happening now, but people getting cooped up at home and feeling like, yeah, we need to do something, and bringing them out seems wise. So our farm market business has done reasonably well this year, as have most of them around the world. I'm sure you're seeing the same things.
Yeah. So I'd say our retail, which includes our kitchen and stuff, is running about 80% of what it did last year. And we'd been up every year. Mm-hmm. So you would have expected us to be up this year, but we're down maybe 20. But it's we've adapted, and it's fine. We did have to adjust the way we serve tables now, so everybody gets table service. We weren't doing that before. Mm-hmm. And so we modified pricing a little bit to reflect that. And it's all, we've adjusted to it, but boy, I can't wait to get back. And frankly, I was hoping this wasn't going to last as long as it looks like it might.
Yeah. I mean,
and you got to be careful. This over the winter, we're still going to be open. I mean, and we're only going to be able to serve people inside. We have all the tables at least 6 feet apart, and everybody serves with masks on, and we have sanitizer everywhere, and we're doing everything we can. But boy, we can't just shut down. I mean, we got a lot of people that depend on the place for work, and
we depend on them too, right? I mean, we've been talking about this as well, because you can't be in the business in Johnson County or almost anywhere and not recognize that keeping your best help is your most important asset. And if you shut down for 2 months or 3 months, are you going to be able to get those folks back? Or it's dicey. So yeah, I think the way we see it, your back's kind of against the wall. Business is going to slow down here. There's no question. We're going into, as we talk today, it's getting on middle of October right now. Things are cooling off. Winter is not too far away, and things will slow down. We look at, say, how can we keep people employed and keep this thing rolling? It's not an easy task.
It's not. No. And we're with you. One thing we were fortunate to have going for us when the COVID thing hit was we happened to have everything we needed to get in the sanitizer business. And so we decided on a Thursday to get in the sanitizer business. This was in March of 20, and by the following Monday we had product.
Wow.
By the end of Monday night. So I mean, making the product was easy. We had everything we needed. And the main ingredient being, of course, alcohol, which we make. So really it was just the packaging and labeling and the FDA approval, which luckily, you're pre-approved. It was an emergency. You're pre-approved if you make it in a certain manner. So we made it in the exact manner that we needed to make it. So by that next week, we were handing out thousands of bottles of sanitizer to cars. We'd announce where we're going to be, and cars would pull up, and we'd hand them sanitizer. So we were giving it away in the 4-ounce bottles, and then we were selling the bigger quantities to all the businesses. Everybody needed it, and they needed it immediately. So there was about a 6-week period there where we were shut down, but we didn't have to let anybody stay home because they all got in the sanitizer business real quick there.
So is that interesting enough to keep going with, or
nope? No, it's not interesting enough.
Okay. Yeah.
It's we could never be, I think, competitive long term, or at least that wouldn't be anything we'd want to be. Now, I think we'll be almost entirely out of it by the end of 2020. It's dried up. I mean, frankly, some of the nice gels and stuff that have been out there now, they're finally starting to keep it in stock better. And so the stuff that we made has less demand. Yeah, right. So this is perfect.
So I'm going to wind you back a little bit because one of the things that I found interesting about your story is that there's actually connections between your family and you guys have some connections to farms and corn that's grown. Walk us through that.
Well, you did some homework. So my wife and I are both from Winthrop, Iowa, and we both grew up in farm families. I grew up on a farm. She grew up in town, but they were farmers. And we had livestock. They had some livestock. So, we both grew up in an agricultural setting and love it. And frankly, we're going to live here the rest of our lives. We're not moving south or anything like that. We like it here. And my last name is Quint, and my great-grandfather moved to Iowa from Vintridge, Germany in 1881. If you go to Vintridge, Germany today, it's in the heart of the Mosel wine region. It's on the Mosel River, and the prominent winery in Vintridge is still Weingut Quint. So I can go back 9 generations. That's as far back as we're able to find records, and our family's been in the business as far back as we can go. So, I didn't know as much about that as when I got started as I do now, because over time I've put more and more pieces together. But I feel honestly like it's in my blood. And it could be because of the way I grew up. I mean, if you come to Cedar Ridge, my dad's old still that he used strictly for medicinal purposes is on display there, and the old apple press. And I can remember, we had 6 or 7 apple trees, and I'd have to scoop all those apples up, and we'd run them through the press and make apple wine. And then legend has it maybe pass some of that through the still.
Some of it escaped into the still, did it?
That's right.
Yeah.
And so I mean, maybe that was it, but I feel like I'm pretty connected to it, so it feels right for us.
Well, the other thing that's interesting is the connection with today's row cropping, and you mentioned this at the beginning, is, Iowa's the number 1 producer of corn. So much of that corn gets run through animals that may want it or may not want it, but I mean, a lot of it runs through pigs and increasingly through other critters that may not be so well positioned to handle corn. But very little of it actually goes into bourbon or any other. I mean, there's a lot of value added, whether it's corn syrup or whatever. Corn gets used for a zillion different things. But I find it really incredibly refreshing that you're doing something with it directly, taking it into a really high-end product, which is, I think, the ultimate use for corn in my mind.
I appreciate that.
That's a bad thing.
Well, so along those lines, we sell $4 worth of corn to Kentucky, and we buy back $40 worth of bourbon, right? Why don't we just keep that extra $36 right here in the state? Let's keep that circulating here in Iowa. And, we love that. No matter what happens, no matter who owns Cedar Ridge someday, we're very proud of the legacy that we have, being one of the pioneers in the business. And I just hope over decades that we get respect. Obviously, we have it here in the state now, as we're outselling Jim Beam and Maker's Mark in the bourbon category here in Iowa. But we'd like to introduce it to more and more states over time, and maybe someday we'll be a net exporter of bourbon. When I got started, we imported 100% of it, from out of state.
Yeah, it's a fantastic, and as you mentioned, that local economic impact of taking corn, it's grown in Iowa, converting it into a high-end product, and that money then staying in Iowa. I mean, the inverse of that is so ubiquitous in this corn culture, isn't it? Where these guys kill, they literally work themselves to the bone and are highly leveraged with very expensive equipment, producing $4 a bushel corn, and all of the profits from because it doesn't become a $4 a bushel product anymore. It gets converted into $20, $30, $40 a bushel products, which that money is exported to Minneapolis or increasingly China or Argentina or, so many other places around the world that
There's a particular vodka that's available here in Iowa that comes out of Texas, and we Iowans are sending $1 million a month to Texas for vodka. When the raw materials are right here. So, I don't know if I'll ever try to tackle that project, but maybe you can have that one, Paul. Why don't you try to fight back some of the Texas vodka that's coming into the state, and that that Iowa money's leaving for Texas every month. It's
well, it's a different economy, isn't it? Because people that have the unfortunate experience of having to deal with me on a regular basis know that I'm a big fan of these old horticultural journals that are they're sort of masterpieces from the 1800s and early 1900s, and they chronicle Iowa as a producer of a bunch of different horticultural crops. It wasn't just apples. We were number 6 in apples, but we were among the top 10 in strawberries, in cherries, in so many horticultural.
We were 6 in wine production.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah, in the early 1900s. Yep.
Yeah, and so that money stirred around the local economy and around, and now we export all this corn and we import all these products, and it's really, with the soils that we have, we didn't have the right wine grapes forever. We don't necessarily. It's going to take a little drilling down to get even to the right apple varieties, because not all apples do well here like they do in Michigan, where I was from. But that's not hard to drill in. It's not hard to figure that out. And if we want a really viable local economy, we need to, consumers in particular, need to be buying things like Cedar Ridge products that are taking locally made, locally produced crops and turning them into a product that people can take. And I think one of the really encouraging things is the fact that we are seeing a lot of people starting to recognize the importance of doing that locally from an economic standpoint, as much as just a sort of moral.
And we were, earlier we were talking about the county. The county we're in is, I think, pretty open to supporting that kind of a thing. So we do have that going for us, I think. We just got to make quality products. We got to make it compelling. We got to give them interesting things to do that make them want to come back and come out here. So as long as we do those things, we should keep heading the right direction with us.
Yeah, I think so. I think my own thoughts on the county are a little fuzzy, just because I think, at the end of the day, a city like Iowa City or Cedar Rapids will give tax abatements and all other sorts of incentives to bring companies in that still export a tremendous amount of the profits out. Okay, they hire people. Yep, fair enough. That's a good thing. We need employment. But I think there's not enough consideration in my mind given to the fact that in addition to hiring people, our businesses also circulate money locally, circulate profits locally. And you just said, I think, one of the most important things, which is you intend to stay here. We love Iowa too. We love this place, and we'll be here. They'll bury us here. And that means any profits that we get lucky enough to make are going to stay here and swirl around. And I think that's something that is not thought enough about in the echelons of government here.
Yeah, that's right. You never see money like that being issued for a business like we're in. Yeah.
No, it's really not. There was a thing up in Woodbury County, up in northwestern Iowa, that I found really interesting. And they actually had this guy who was eventually run out of office for something, I don't remember what, but he came up with this idea, and Woodbury County for a while granted incentives to any business that bought locally produced food. So if a school wanted to buy locally produced food, the county would give a subsidy for that locally produced food. And I thought that is just brilliant. It really is smart. But that takes some guts. Not a lot of people willing to say we're going to do that, and especially in today's world.
Well, and you got economic development groups, hired to bring in business. Well, they don't have their targets on businesses like ours.
That's right.
So they're trying to bring in the corporate, the 5-story buildings and whatnot. And yeah, so I can see why it's the way it is, but I agree with you.
Yeah. Yeah. So what do you see down the road? What's Cedar Ridge, where do you envision? You've got kids in the business, for one thing. We should talk a little bit about that.
Yep.
You got 4 kids, we just learned.
4 kids. My oldest son, our oldest son is our head distiller. Mm-hmm. So I still remind him I'm the master distiller.
Okay.
He's simply the head distiller at this point, but yeah, he knows more about it than I do at this point. But so I think he's probably long term in the business, but I doubt any of the others are going to get involved. Yeah. So what's going to happen down the road? I think no matter what happens, my wife and I are always going to be proud of what we got started here. I could see a scenario where we keep this thing going and we keep it family owned. And I could also see a scenario where if the thing wants to grow faster than we're comfortable growing it, that I'd have to bring in, somebody who wants to take the next level of risk.
Yeah.
I've risked everything I can think of maybe like 3 times. You know what I mean?
I know
When you
exactly
start,
what you mean.
and then now I'm going to build all the How come this building's not any bigger? Well, it's all the building I could build with the money I had at the time. And so we feel like we've risked everything about 3 times. Now things are going pretty well for us. There'll come a day where we're going to need, we're going to outgrow, if we keep growing, we're going to outgrow everything we have. And we're going to have to just move everything, and that's going to be a big, big risky project. I doubt that my wife and I are going to take that one on at this point. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So we either have to decide if we're going to level off or, maybe give up some portion of the thing to let it go where it wants to go. And my heart's like, the business is, I said I have 4 kids. This business of mine, Cedar Ridge, it's like a 5th child.
Yeah.
If the thing wants to take off, honestly, I think I'd be doing it a disservice if we held it back. So I can see, actually, we've had some discussions about, hey, what's this thing look like? 5, 10 years out, because, Paul, people don't realize this, or they don't think of it. There'd be no reason why they would until you're in the middle of it. In the whiskey business, we have people working around the clock. We run 24 hours a day making whiskey for 2024 and 2025 right now. So we spend a lot of time thinking about 5 years from now. Well, if you keep growing, if this year, if we're going to sell 30,000 cases of whiskey, well, what are we going to sell 4 or 5 years from now? Well, we're going to sell, 75,000 cases of whiskey. Well, then you better make that, right? And so you got to stay way ahead of this thing.
Wow.
Because, at some point it's too late. Oh, no, we outkicked our coverage here. We either have to sell younger whiskey now or we have to cut back how much we sell. Because it's like an accordion. If you outsell your production, it gets younger, doesn't taste as good. You don't outsell it anymore, and it kind of it finds its own, level there. And so that's one thing that's been very interesting about our business. But, I think Cedar Ridge, if the growth comes fairly easily, we're gonna keep going with it. So for years, our goal's been to get to number 1 in the bourbon category in Iowa. We just got there. I think we can stay there. And now really our focus, our spend is on the contiguous states around Iowa, trying to build a regional brand. Honestly, we ship some stuff. We ship stuff all over. We ship stuff to Europe, to Australia, to Japan, East, West Coast. But, it's more like if they want it, we sell it. We're not out there spending money in the market, really. Where we're investing in the brand is in the Midwest here.
Right. So how do you, I guess I hadn't really thought that through very well, but it really is true. Your mind is focused on the future in ways that I can't even imagine. So as you look down that 5 years from now, a lot depends on to me, one of the central questions is how sustainable is it that people are going to continue to be interested in craft beer, craft cider, craft distilled whiskeys? And, I mean, you've got a big bet in that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think, own your backyard. Hopefully in Iowa, Cedar Ridge isn't really thought of so much just craft anymore, but it's the whiskey you buy. And we make a whiskey that I think is so approachable that it's your everyday whiskey. As long as it's affordable, it can be your everyday whiskey. There's plenty of fantastic whiskeys out there that I have on my bar. In fact, we're having a company outing this weekend, and we bought a whole bunch of fun different whiskeys. But they're not the whiskeys you drink every day. We've always built Cedar Ridge to be the whiskey that you want to drink every day. It's your go-to whiskey. Now, do you want a Blanton's or do you want a Basil Hayden once in a while? Of course, and everybody likes their variety. But on that night when you're not thinking and you're just going to make yourself a cocktail, you're not thinking, you're watching the news. We want you grabbing the Cedar Ridge bottle, and so that's what we think. So it's important to us first and foremost always to stay completely relevant in Iowa, and then get what we can outside of there. And we think the easiest place to go next is just Minneapolis, Chicago, Madison, Milwaukee, St. Louis, Kansas City, Omaha. Yep. Really, that's where we're going next. And when I say next, we've been in those markets for some of them for a few years now, but we're really working the growth in those markets.
And how do you see? I mean, do you see further developments in the alcohol licensing and stuff like that? I mean, are there still battles you want to fight in that realm? Not really. I think we've got things to the point where we just play a little more defense now. We just don't want anybody to take away these things. We're kind of on a level playing field with the states around us and across the country now. It took us a while to get there, but we're kind of there. So I think, we stay in touch with what's going on more just so we never get surprised by anything. But we're not actively seeking anything more at the moment. Yeah. Well, Jeff, it's just been a real privilege and a great opportunity to get to know you a little better and get to hear what's going on. You got any? Tell people how they'd find out more about Cedar Ridge if they're
sure. They should go to cedarridgewhiskey.com and look us up on the website. Follow us on Facebook and Instagram, and doesn't take long to find us. Just type us in, Cedar Ridge Whiskey.
And then get your butt out there to Swisher, Iowa, and I mean it's a stunning view. It's a great space, good food, good people. It's just a really good time. So that's the best thing.
Hopefully, just as nice as it is here at Wilson Orchard. We love it here as well. Yeah. So how come we don't get together and talk more often? Like
well,
this?
I don't know. We need to do that. Yeah, we got
too busy, right?
Yeah, that's a curse. But maybe with all these kids in the business now, things will get better. Well, and thanks to you guys for watching us or listening to us or whatever the hell you do with these podcasts. This is Pollinate at Studio B here at Wilson's, and come back, see us again. Tune in. We'll keep flinging these things out at you, and let us know if you see anything you really despise, or even better yet, if you see anything that you mildly like. Let us know, and let us any ideas you have. We're interested. Thanks for your time. Cheers.